This is a story about failure.
Jalen, over the course of your career, even when you were young, did it take you any time to get to the point as a player where you were evaluating yourself in terms of the team, first and foremost and only? You know, like in our jobs, we might look at a quarterback and say, okay, well, he threw for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns, but his team lost, and therefore he's good, but you can't look at quarterback wins as a stat because the guy played great, his team lost, and it's not his fault that he lost. You seem not to care about that stuff. You're all about, did the Eagles win, did they not? How did you get to that point?
By losing.
As we all know, going into the 2025 season, the Philadelphia Eagles are defending Super Bowl champions for the second time in the past decade, and they are clearly, from top to bottom, one of the premier organizations in football and all of sports. To start us off, I'm not going to sit here and act like the Eagles have been one of the worst run organizations in the NFL for the past couple of years, not like, Browns, Jets, even the Cowboys, but I think it's just fascinating to look at how much failure goes into extreme success. And I think the Eagles are a perfect example of this. It takes me to one of the main themes of this video, which is organizational good intentions. And Howie Roseman said this summer that the Eagles' philosophy when it comes to roster building is 3 steps: draft, develop, and sign. Compare this system of positive reinforcement through reward with the 2 best pass rushers in the league requesting trades as a result of stalled contract negotiations this past year, Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons, and it's easy to see why the Eagles' culture is so strong. Players know that if they perform, they will be treated well. However, the system of paying players early can lead to huge misses, which is really where the post-2017 roller coaster began. So let's go back and take an in-depth look at how the in-between years made the Eagles champions once again and reset the standard for quality organizations in the NFL. In 2016, Howie Roseman was the prodigal's son, returning from exile after owner Jeffrey Lurie handed personnel control over to former head coach Chip Kelly, someone you may have heard former Eagles players' opinions on.
With color, they felt and seen the same thing. Like, yo, he seems uncomfortable with black players. But
By the way, I love the fact that Chip Kelly is just Deshaun Jackson and LeSean McCoy's punching bag now. Years after he got them out of Philadelphia, it's basically the entire reason for their podcast existence, and I totally support it. One of the key lessons Howie Roseman seemed to take from his time observing from afar was how Chip treated fan-favorite players as he traded Nick Foles and LeSean McCoy and released perhaps the most universally beloved Eagle of my lifetime in Deshaun Jackson. And since those 3 first left the team, I cannot remember a single Eagles fan favorite still playing at a high level who has walked out that door. The negative feedback from the fan base was heard. In 2016, the Eagles traded up for Carson Wentz in the draft, pairing him with new head coach Doug Peterson. Initially, Wentz was supposed to be Sam Bradford's backup for his rookie season, but when Teddy Bridgewater tore his ACL, the Vikings traded a first-round pick, that's right, a first-round pick, for Sam Bradford, and naturally Howie Roseman said yes to this, and Wentz was thrown into the fire and performed admirably in his rookie season. We're not going to cover that, but so admirably, in fact, that Howie decided the Eagles had to build around him for 2017 while he was on his rookie contract, and this is perhaps the most common practice in the NFL now, and Howie was on it early. And speaking of things ahead of their time, I'm just going to put some Carson Wentz highlights in here. Next is some Patrick Mahomes highlights for no reason at all. Anyway, Howie goes into the offseason, goes ham, brings in Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, LeGarrette Blount, Chris Long, Brandon Brooks. Now, if you know football at all, you know the story of the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles. They dominate the league. Carson Wentz is the MVP frontrunner before he tears his ACL in a division-clinching classic against the LA Rams. Nick Foles steps up, looks shaky at first, but then puts together 2 of the best games you'll ever see a quarterback play in the championship game and Super Bowl, and immortalizes himself and that team in Philadelphia and NFL history. Here's what you may not know about the season, and here's kind of the main detail I want to bring about. Alshon Jeffrey and Tim Jernigan were initially signed to one-year prove-it deals by Howie when they got him in March. When they played well, Howie gave them both massive extensions during the season. Little did he know neither of them had more than 2 seasons of good football left in the tank, and Howie has said since that he got too emotionally attached to the 2017. It was his first great success, first love. We all get too attached. It's how it is. But he regretted some of the contracts he gave out. And can you blame the guy? He brought one of the greatest, most historic cities in America its first Super Bowl championship, but those contracts hurt the team. And Howie would get the ultimate lesson in the dangers of GM loyalty the next year. 2018 was an odd year. The Eagles started out with a slight Super Bowl hangover, understandable, riddled by injuries due in large part to the amount of veterans on the team, like I mentioned earlier. The Eagles were 6-7 by mid-December when, get this, Carson Wentz got injured and Nick Foles came in and saved the season. As an aside, at this point in Philadelphia fandom, speaking from personal experience, it had felt like God himself had stepped in to save your franchise, bring them a championship, and then possibly bring them another one in the form of this 6'6" guy wearing number 9. It was the craziest feeling ever for a moment there. Foles won 3 straight games to sneak the Birds into the playoffs in 2018, including setting a consecutive completion record in the last game of the season against Washington. The playoffs come around and the ultimate divine intervention moment happens, the double doink. The Eagles advance. What is happening? Divisional round. The Eagles come out hot against New Orleans, the best team in the league. The Saints dominate the next 3 quarters of the game, but Will Lutz misses a field goal that would have made it a 2-possession game. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. The Eagles are going to take down the number 1 seed Saints and go to LA and play the Rams, who they had already beaten that year, with Foles, and then it'll be a rematch against New England in the Super Bowl, obviously. Then a top 5 most devastating moment of my life happened.
To get this off with a 2-minute warning. A little surprise. Foles back throws. Intercepted! Went right through Jeffrey's hands! It's Lattimore!
Ask any Eagle on that team, they thought they were going back-to-back. Shout out to Cravon LeBlanc, who was incredible that playoff run in a depleted secondary. I don't want his name to get lost in history. Anyway, the Eagles stayed loyal to their supposed franchise quarterback in Wentz the following offseason. They did it right by Foles and let him follow the money to Jacksonville. Then, the ultimate sign of faith, Howie Roseman pays Wentz a max deal. The next season, 2019, goes almost identically to 2018, but this time it's Wentz saving his own skin by going on a winning streak with an injury-riddled Eagles team, getting them to 9 wins. In the playoff game, Jadeveon Clowney takes a cheap shot at Wentz, not for the first time on an Eagles quarterback, and knocks him out of the game. Josh McCown did his best, but it was kind of a wash. Despite the devastation of that ending to a magical run, Eagles fans felt they had reason to believe in Wentz again. After looking only okay in 2018 and most of 2019, he dragged the team to the playoffs, and the contract looked worth it. However, 2019 was also the first year of real rumors throughout the organization of divides in the locker room, and we know damn near for certain that Wentz was the source of those locker room divides, now looking back.
Wentz didn't want to run that offense no more because Foles had won it with that offense.
That offense.
Is that what happened?
But let me ask you this, though.
So we changed the whole damn thing.
Then the 2020 draft happened. Oh boy. The 2020 draft nearly got Howie Roseman fired. He took Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, and also T. Higgins. People don't bring that up a lot. None of the 8 players he took from rounds 3 to 7 got a second contract. However, the most scrutinized pick ended up being the best pick he could have ever made, a guy named Jalen Hurts, taken 53rd overall. There was genuine outrage from a lot of the fan base. Wentz had struggled to climb out of the shadow of Nick Foles' statue, and now the Eagles were putting even more pressure on him by taking a quarterback in the second round. This was Howie eliminating emotionality from his game. Caring about how Wentz felt wasn't going to be good for the team. With Wentz's history, the Eagles needed insurance. So 2020 happens. The pandemic season was odd for a million reasons. I try to forget it happened, mainly because it is the Eagles' only losing season since 2016. They went 4-10-1. Wentz was benched, never regaining his confidence or the confidence of the locker room. Hurts came in and played better as a rookie, and Howie was reviled by the fan base. Jalen Reagor looked awful. Wentz was ruined and traded for what would become a first-round pick that became many first-round picks. Thank you to the Saints for that. Beloved champion head coach Doug Peterson was fired, and to replace him, they brought in some Italian named Nick Sirianni. So this is where everything philosophically changed again. The new regime came with a new philosophy for Howie, drafting blue chippers. No more overthinking it. First 2 picks in 2021, Devontae Smith and Landon Dickerson from Alabama. The Jalen Hurts era was underway, and get this, it went exactly like 2018 and 2019. In 2021, the Eagles started slow before a late season win streak got them into the playoffs with 9 wins before getting blown out by the defending champs in Tampa Bay. Hurts did earn another year and some help though, so Howie really started leaning on dudes. He took his spare first-round pick and traded it for A.J. Brown, a franchise-changing player. His first 3 picks in the draft, Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, and Nakobe Dean. That's Georgia, Nebraska, Georgia. Oh, and AJ went to Ole Miss in the SEC, so another blue chipper. They signed Hassan Reddick in free agency and traded for CJ Gardner-Johnson. The Eagles had a great roster again and made a run to the Super Bowl 5 years from the last one. Howie had taken that aging, dysfunctional corpse of a team in 2020 and made it NFC champions in just 2 years, thanks to his ability to ruthlessly move on dead weight, which, as we detailed earlier, was not something he had in his bag before. And that's the thing about players who are dead weight. Bill Belichick was a master of this. You have to see it coming a year or 2 years early so that you'll have buyers. Yeah, the Eagles did tragically lose the 2022 Super Bowl to the Chiefs, but they were back. No question about it, they were back, and the momentum really continued into the offseason. They had a spare first-round pick thanks to the Saints again, and you got to use that on Jalen Carter, who fell to them in the top 10, which a team defending a conference championship title should never, ever have a top 10 pick, but, Howie Roseman. And then after that, I think it's easy to say football happened. The Eagles took a dive in 2023, which just happens in the league. After starting out 10-1, they lost 5 of their last 6 and got blown out by Tampa Bay in the wildcard round. Again. Jason Kelce retired, Fletcher Cox retired. So what does Howie do? He changes his philosophy again. The meltdown was so bad, the past decade had been defined by the Eagles' ability to draft and develop offensive and defensive lines that remained in 2024, but the Eagles had never taken a running back, cornerback, or linebacker position seriously until they had to. The offense needed another gear after 2023, and the Eagles linebacker unit was the worst in the league by the end of the year, so Howie signs this guy named Saquon, but more sneakily signs a guy named Zach Bond and hands him over to an old sensei named Vic Fangio. They doubled up on cornerbacks in the draft with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, and boom! See what putting your pride aside does? In 2024, the Eagles suddenly had the best running back, defensive backfield, and linebacker room in the league. And as we know, they finished it off with a Super Bowl victory 7 years on from the franchise's first. It's easy to look at Kansas City and Baltimore and Buffalo, who have, in the same span I'm talking about with the Eagles, been consistently good to great, backed by generationally amazing quarterback play. And you can call that the blueprint for the rest of the league, and some teams do like to follow that blueprint, but the Eagles seem to me to be the blueprint for the league at large, and if we're taking this as a metaphor, for all of us here out in the real world. So learn from this. Don't be afraid to admit your mistakes. Don't be too proud. Arrogance and pride cost the Eagles some years where they could have been real contenders, and accountability has them back on the mountaintop, hopefully for years to come.